Hey, on this episode, we might talk about some things that might make you uncomfortable. We're going to be talking about sexual assault and rape. If you think this will make you uncomfortable, you might want to skip this episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to Girls Can, a series of podcasts created to help educate and inform young women throughout the world. Our goal is to empower and inspire the next generation because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.
Hey everyone, it's Abigail, and I'm with my sister Brooke. Hey, why don't you tell us about who we have in the studio today?
Today we're here with Miss Hillary Rodriguez. Hillary is a representative from the Rape Crisis Center, which is a program of Lifelines counseling services, which provides direct services to sexual assault victims and their families in Mobile, Washington, and Clark counties. Hillary is a volunteer coordinator. Today she is here to talk about her work at the Rape Crisis Center and sexual assault awareness. Hillary, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your work at the Rape Crisis Center.
The Rape Crisis Center is a division of Lifelines Counseling Services. We help victims of rape, sexual abuse, and sexual violence by providing a number of services such as victim advocacy, a 24/7 crisis hotline, community outreach and education programs. We also work to change social beliefs in institutions, particularly in terms of how rape is understood by medical and legal professionals in society. I'm the volunteer coordinator as well as a victim advocate. I'm responsible for screening and selecting incoming volunteers for a victim advocacy program. We train our victim advocates to provide information and resources as well as support for victim survivors in many different situations, such as during forensic examinations, which most people know as rape kits, the crisis hotline, law enforcement interviews, and court. I also attend local events to inform our community of the resources available through our organization.
So when you have a victim who first comes in, what usually is the first thing that starts to happen?
Usually how it starts is we get a call, typically from USA Women's and Children's Hospital, letting us know that we have a victim, and our on-call advocate will go to the hospital and accompany them while they have the forensics examination done. Other times we will get calls through the crisis hotline with somebody disclosing that they've been sexually assaulted, or it's been months and years later and they're having a particularly hard time, or they encountered a triggering event, and we kind of help them through that process. Usually, if it's their first time calling, we'll get them set up with counseling services if that's what they're wanting.
It seems like it would be very difficult to share something so private and something horrible that's happened with a complete stranger. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to get help?
Well, actually, we tend to be a little bit more unbiased than some of the friends and family members of the survivors, because a lot of times when they disclose to friends and family, they get questions like, well, why were you even there? Why were you hanging out with this person? Why were you doing this? Why were you doing that? And they just get bombarded with all these questions, and while the questions may be well-intended from friends and family, they don't get that from us. They call us and they get nothing but support and hearing, we believe you and we're here for you every step of the way. What is going to be the right step for you?
That must be really helpful, and I do agree with that part, how it really helps someone to not get a biased answer and just the complete support and love from everyone, which I think is really nice.
Well, thank you.
So say I'm at a party. How can you tell if someone's been drugged, and what would happen if you were drugged? What should you do?
So alcohol and date rape drugs cause many of the same effects on the body as both cause mental and physical impairment. One of the major signs that you've been drugged is if you haven't had alcohol but you feel drunk, or if you have been drinking but the impact of the alcohol feels extremely strong, saying like you only had one drink but feeling like you had 4 or 5. Date rape drugs are very potent and they take effect very quickly. And when the drugs are mixed with alcohol, they have an even stronger effect. Some warning signs would be having trouble remembering basic things, feeling extremely heavy or the loss of body control, extreme nausea. If you have any suspicions that you may have been drugged, find or call somebody that you trust and give them as much information as you can, or call 911. And if you see someone who shows signs of being heavily intoxicated or near incapacitated, please check on them and help them get to a safe place.
How can we as a society play a bigger role in spreading awareness about sexual assault?
By talking about it. There have been a lot more discussions regarding sexual assault and rape culture over the past few years, and that is having a huge impact on raising awareness. By continuing these conversations, being aware of and rejecting victim-blaming ideologies, and getting involved with the Rape Crisis Center, you can play a crucial role in bringing awareness and prevention to our community.
Can you please explain victim-blaming?
A lot of times people don't even tend to realize that that's what they're doing. It's just we hear so many things in the media like, well, if you wouldn't have been wearing such a short skirt, you wouldn't have provoked the assault. If you wouldn't have been doing this, if you wouldn't have been doing that, then it wouldn't have caused the assault. And there are so many different precautions that we can take to be safe, but there is no guaranteed way to be safe. And the important thing to know is whether you take all these precautions or none of them, you never deserve the assault. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is they feel that the responsibility falls on the victim to prevent sexual assault when really rape is caused exclusively by rapists.
What advice would you give to a girl who is experiencing victim blaming?
I would say reach out to the Rape Crisis Center. Seek counseling. Find friends who aren't judgmental. Find a support group that they're not going to get that judgment from.
How can we speak out against victim blaming?
Well, whenever we hear people perpetuating these ideas, well, if she wouldn't have been out at this party or if she wouldn't have been here, we can speak up and say, no, it doesn't matter. People have the right to go out and feel safe. Nobody deserves assault. Nobody is asking for it. Simply by just reminding people that rape falls on the rapists, not the victims.
I know that the Rape Crisis Center is a great resource to get help, but what are some other ways that victims of sexual assault can get help?
Well, through the Rape Crisis Center, we have the counseling, we have the 24/7 hotline. We also have support groups. College students, there are several groups organized on college campuses that deal with sexual assault, and they have support groups there as well.
What leads to rape culture and how can we help it?
There's several different things that lead to rape culture. A large thing that leads to rape culture is toxic masculinity. And one thing that I really want to emphasize is that there is not a war on masculinity. Toxic masculinity and masculinity are not the same thing at all. Toxic masculinity is defined as the constellation of socially regressive male traits that serve to foster domination, the evaluation of women, homophobia, and wanton violence. Bullying of boys by their peers, using femininity to insult a boy whenever emotion is expressed, settling disputes through anger and violence, the idea that the worth of a man is dependent on the amount of sexual encounters he has. These are all common expressions of toxic masculinity. And so many of these ideas start being instilled from toddlerhood. For example, there's girl toys and boy toys, and playing with girl toys is bad. It perpetuates the idea that men cannot be assaulted since they are expected to be highly sexual beings. And if you aren't, then you must be lacking testosterone. Toxic masculinity teaches men that the goal in a relationship is to have power and control, so sex tends to become a weapon to assert dominance over women. And there's also this common idea in toxic masculinity that males still function with a primitive brain so that they are incapable of controlling impulses, and then their actions are brushed off with boys will be boys.
Yes. So toxic masculinity can lead to the rape of women, but I'm also sure it can lead to the rape of men too.
Absolutely. You see it a lot in the prison system. We have several male inmates that come in because of sexual assault in the prison. And it's not about forming relationships or bonds. It's very much about power and control and asserting dominance and showing who's the head honcho.
Can we go back? What is empathetic listening? Is that something that we can learn so that if I have a friend who is sexually assaulted, I can learn to be a better listener and learn to help them?
So one of the important things is to recognize the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is basically when somebody expresses a situation or a feeling to you, and you just kind of look at them like, well, that's bad. I'm sorry. That's so sad. Empathy is more putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how you would feel in that situation and what kind of support you would want and what you would need. And one of the most important things to do if a friend discloses to you is believe them and tell them that it's okay and encourage them to reach out for help. You can be empathetic. You can share your experiences without focusing too much on it and making it about you. You can relate to them and show them that you understand. Tell them that you appreciate them for sharing that with you, because like you said earlier, that it's hard to tell somebody about that kind of event and that kind of situation. It's incredibly difficult because you don't know what kind of response you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get judgment or if you're going to have your experience minimized.
We know that consent is very important, but could you explain what specifies as consent?
So consent is when you're engaging in a sexual activity, it's about communication, and it should happen every single time. Giving consent for one activity one time does not mean giving consent for increased or recurring sexual contact. You can withdraw consent at any point if you feel uncomfortable. And it's so important to clearly communicate to your partner that you're no longer comfortable with the activity and you want to stop. The best way to ensure both parties are comfortable is to talk about it. If it's not a consistent, sober, and enthusiastic yes, it's not consent.
How would people think that if they are in that situation, they will fight your attacker off, or you're the person you're with off, and say no? But sometimes you're in a situation where you can't say no without the person getting violent and you're afraid. What would you do?
Well, unfortunately, at that point, that is definitely sexual assault. And like you said, we can hypothesize all day, well, I would fight back, I would scream, I would kick, I would do everything. But a lot of times we don't know how we respond until we're in that situation. And our bodies kind of get taken over by that fear, and our brain kicks in and goes into survival mode. And it basically functions 3 different ways. We either fight, flight, or freeze. And unfortunately, a lot of times people just become paralyzed by fear. But if you know somebody is nearby, scream out for help and try to get somebody to come into the room with you to break up the situation. Well, this is a really, really great point to talk about bystander intervention. It is so important for us to be on the lookout for each other and looking out for each other's safety. If we witness something that sets off a warning alarm inside of us, don't just blow it off and hope that everything turns out well. Work on remembering 3 Ds: distract, delegate, and direct. Distract, use anything that distracts the person enough to discontinue the abusive behavior. Delegate, if you don't feel comfortable or safe intervening, delegate the intervention to somebody else or have somebody come with you to break it up. And direct, directly address the abuse. I know it can be really, really intimidating and challenging to find the courage to speak out, but those seemingly small actions can be absolutely life-saving for someone.
So are there any resources that you could point me and other girls to prepare anyone going off to college or even in high school about what we've been talking about today?
I would highly encourage everyone attending college to watch the documentary The Hunting Ground. It's based on a study by Dr. David Lesak, and it's regarding the prevalence of sexual assault on college campuses and some of the common dismissive ways that it's handled by administration. And it also does a really great job at explaining your rights as a college student.
Say I'm a volunteer and want to get involved. What are some things or ways I can get involved at the Rape Crisis Center?
Well, one of the main ways is becoming a victim advocate. We need as much help as we can get because we have such a high number of calls that come in, helping with fundraising events, community awareness events, packing clothing bags to take to the hospital. And also, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so we have a ton of community events going on, like Take Back the Night Walk, our Wounded Heart Workshop, Denim Day, and Break the Silence spoken word event. And of course, you can always see our calendar of events on our website at lifelinesmobile.org.
So what is a volunteer victim advocate? And then is anyone able to become a victim advocate?
A victim advocate is somebody who provides emotional and physical support. We are there to provide appropriate referrals, information, and resources. We basically take anybody to be a victim advocate. Of course, there's a very thorough screening process, but we allow males and females, and you do have to be 18 and older.
Is there training involved, and how much is it?
Yes, there is definitely training. There is 50 hours worth of training. You go to a 3-day training program. It's usually over the course of a weekend. Then you are given several assignments to complete on your own. And then you go on a few shadow shifts with one of our supervisors. So you actually go to the hospital with them before you start going on hospital calls on your own. And if anybody wants to become a victim advocate, email me at hrodriguez@lifelinesmobile.org or call us at 251-431-5100.
Hillary, thank you so much for coming today and speaking. I feel like we really learned a lot. Before we go, Girls Can asks every single person who comes in here, what book that you've read do you think all young high school girls should read before they go off to college?
One of my personal preferences would be 13 Reasons Why. I read that in high school, and it was so powerful. It is a very, very difficult read, but it does such an amazing job at really kind of showing the challenges that you have as a high school and college student and how so much can be prevented just by people speaking up and being kind to each other.
If anyone wants more information or to get in touch with the Rape Crisis Center, how do they do it?
You can go on our website, which is lifelinesmobile.org. You could also call the crisis line at 251-473-7273, or you could call our office for outreach and education opportunities at 251-431-5100.
Thank you so much again, Hillary. We really appreciate you coming today. It was nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been Girls Can, a podcast and an organization dedicated to improving the lives of young women in our community.
We want to encourage young women to make a difference through education and service.
Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow. Because the girls of today become the future leaders of tomorrow.